There is an experiment you have never heard of that quietly changed everything we thought we knew about pain. It did not involve surgery. It did not involve injury. It did not involve any physical contact at all. It involved a computer game, a ball, and the simple act of being left out. And what it found inside the human brain rewrote the textbooks. The real story starts not with loneliness, but with a question nobody had thought to ask. Not what loneliness feels like, but what loneliness is. Because for most of human history, we treated loneliness as an emotion. Something that lived in the mind. Something soft, subjective, and ultimately not that serious. A feeling, not a wound. That assumption was wrong. In the early 2000s, a social neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger at the University of California, Los Angeles, was working on a deceptively simple question. Does social pain and physical pain share the same neural machinery? Not metaphorically, not poetically. At the level of brain circuits, chemical signals, and measurable activation, are they the same thing? To test this, Eisenberger designed an experiment so simple it almost seems like a joke. She put participants inside a brain scanner and had them play a virtual ball-tossing game called Cyberball. In the game, the participant would toss a ball back and forth with two other players represented on screen. What the participants did not know was that the other players were not real. They were controlled by a computer. And after a few rounds of normal play, the computer players stopped throwing the ball to the participant. They just kept passing it between themselves, leaving the participant out. Completely, silently, without explanation. Nobody was hurt. Nobody said a cruel word. There was no argument, no rejection letter, no dramatic breakup. Just a cartoon ball going back and forth between two other players while the participant sat frozen, excluded, watching. And inside their brain, something remarkable happened. The region that lit up, that activated with measurable, significant intensity, was the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. The same region that processes physical pain. Not a similar region. Not a neighboring region. The same one. The brain of a person being left out of a computer game was responding, neurologically, identically to the brain of a person experiencing physical injury. Eisenberger called this social pain. And with that phrase, she didn't just rename an emotion. She reclassified it. Social pain was not a feeling that resembled pain. It was pain. Running on the same hardware, using the same software, producing the same signals in the same place. This finding landed like a stone in still water. The ripples are still spreading. Because if social pain is real pain, if rejection and exclusion activate the same circuits as a broken bone or a burned hand, then loneliness is not a mood. It is not a personality trait. It is not something the introverted bring on themselves or something the strong simply push through. It is a biological alarm system, as old as the species, as urgent as hunger, as impossible to simply ignore as a wound. And we have been treating it like a character flaw. To understand why the alarm exists at all, you have to go back. Not to the experiment, to the savannah. Your ancestors were not built to survive alone. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, isolation meant death. A human separated from the group faced predation, starvation, exposure, and the complete collapse of every survival system that depended on cooperation. The group was not just emotionally preferable. It was biologically necessary. And so, over millions of years, evolution built a system to keep you connected. To make separation not just unpleasant but painful. To ensure that being cut off from your people would register with the same urgency as a physical injury, because in the environment where this system evolved, it was just as dangerous. Loneliness, in other words, is your body telling you something is wrong. The same way hunger tells you that you need food. The same way pain tells you that tissue is being damaged. The ache of loneliness is a distress signal from an ancient system that is working exactly as designed. The problem is the world it is operating in. Researcher John Cacioppo spent 30 years studying loneliness at the University of Chicago, and what he found was not what anyone expected. He found that loneliness was not simply the absence of social contact. Cacioppo discovered that you could be surrounded by people and still be profoundly lonely. You could be married, employed, living in a city of millions, and your body could be in full loneliness alarm. The The signal, he found, was not about quantity of social connection. It was about quality, about perceived social safety, about whether the people around you felt genuinely like your people. More than that, Cacioppo found that loneliness changes the body at a cellular level. Chronically lonely people showed measurably different gene expression in immune cells, producing more inflammatory proteins and fewer antiviral responses. Their bodies were, in a very literal sense, preparing for attack. Because from the perspective of an ancient biological system, if you are alone, you are exposed. And if you are exposed, something is probably about to hurt you. Loneliness does not just feel like danger. It tells your immune system that danger is coming. This reframes everything. Because the modern world has created conditions for loneliness that have never existed before in human history. Not through cruelty, through architecture, through design, through choices made so gradually that no one noticed the accumulation. You live, in all likelihood, further from your family than any previous generation. You work in structures built for productivity rather than belonging. You communicate through devices that simulate presence while removing the physical cues, touch, eye contact, shared breath, that your ancient nervous system uses to assess whether another person is genuinely there. You have more ways to connect than any human in history, and the data suggests you are lonelier than almost any human in recorded history. The United States Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declared loneliness a public health epidemic in 2023. The numbers behind that declaration were striking. Approximately half of American adults reported measurable levels of loneliness. The health consequences associated with chronic loneliness were equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not metaphorically, in actuarial risk terms. Loneliness was killing people at the rate of a pack and a half a day habit. And yet we still talk about it the way we talk about shyness. Here is what the Cyberball experiment revealed that we keep failing to apply. If social pain is real pain, then social connection is real medicine. Not comfort, not a bonus, not something you make time for when everything else is done. Medicine, the kind the body actually needs to regulate cortisol, to modulate inflammation, to signal to the immune system that the threat has passed. Cacioppo found that chronically lonely people had elevated cortisol even during rest. Their nervous systems never fully came down from high alert. The stress response that was designed to switch on and off was stuck in the on position, slowly degrading everything it touched: cardiovascular health, sleep architecture, cognitive function, immune response. The antidote was not therapy. It was not medication. It was perceived social safety. The felt sense that you belong somewhere, that someone knows you, that if something happened to you, someone would notice. That is a biological need, as basic as calories, as non-negotiable as sleep. And here is the part that the Cyberball experiment whispers to you from inside a brain scanner in 2003. The pain of being left out of a cartoon ball game was real. Measurably, neurologically real. Which means the pain you feel when you are left out of things, when you are not invited, not included, not seen, is not weakness. It is not oversensitivity. It is not something to be ashamed of or pushed through or dismissed. It is a wound. Eisenberger's work and Cacioppo's work, and the decades of research that followed them, point toward something that runs against everything modern culture tells you about strength. Needing people is not a vulnerability. It is a design specification. You were built to need people the way you were built to need oxygen. Not as a preference, as a requirement. The loneliness experiment changed how we see pain. But what it really changed is how we should see each other. Every person you have ever written off as too needy, or too sensitive, or unable to handle being alone, their pain was real. Running on the same circuits as a broken bone. Sounding the same alarm. And every moment of genuine connection, the kind that makes you feel truly seen by another person, is your ancient nervous system finally, briefly, receiving the signal it has been waiting for since before you were born. The alarm stops. The inflammation drops. The cortisol falls. For a moment, you are not alone. And your body, which has been preparing for the worst since the day it arrived in the world, lets itself rest.